Hey there, viewers. Thank you for tuning in to Supermariodiagnostics once again. Today, we are working on a 2015 BMW 750Li, the 4.4 liter N63 engine in it. But first, I'd like to thank our first ever official Super Mario Diagnostics channel sponsor, Top Don. Top Don is making a great name for themselves by not only providing our industry with innovative tooling, but also showing their generous support for technical training both at a local level as well as a national level. In my experience, their customer service is second to none. They are the tools I pick up when working on complex diags and programming, and I recommend them highly. You guys maybe remember this. I published a video on March, and it had a rough running condition and intermittent stalling, and we ended up finding that bank 2 high pressure fuel pump was faulty, and it's come back with the almost exact same symptoms. Now, in that event, we had recommended that they change both high pressure fuel pumps, and the customer opted for just one, the faulty one, and that was the end of that. Now we've got very similar symptoms, except it's a little different. Now it's got like dead misses, and it smells like raw fuel coming out of the tailpipe, and it's just both pipes. It's coming out of both pipes, not just one. I looked underneath; they don't look like they are coming into contact with one another, from what I could tell. Maybe they are through the resonator or through, somewhere else in there, but not that I can see externally. So this leads me already into a certain path, but for now we're just going to take a look at the pre-scan, and we're using the Top Don. For those of you who don't know, let me see if we can fix this a little. That may look better for you guys. I hope it does. ECM1, which is bank 1 obviously, shows high pressure fuel system plausibility, cold start pressure too low. It's an intermittent code. And bank 2 shows several combustion misfires. Cylinder 1 misfire, cylinder 4 misfire, cylinder 3 misfire. So misfires on 3 cylinders, and for some reason it doesn't see it on the fourth, or on the the fourth one in that bank. So cylinder 2, it's not reporting. If you guys remember that video, we saw that bank 1 is the passenger side and bank 2 is the driver's side. When we did the high pressure fuel pump, it was bank 2, it was the driver's side, and this one is showing misfires on bank 1, because 1, 2, 3, and 4 is on the passenger side, much like a Ford, if you guys know. For now, we're going to recreate the symptom. Let's take a look, since we're dealing with bank 1, fuel pressure issues and misfires on that same bank. Let's go into ECM1 and take a look at fuel pressure. Oh, what am I doing? Let's go take a look at fuel pressure on bank 1 and confirm. Of course, I need my key on. It would help to have my key on. Let's try that again. And we'll see if there's anything obvious. These things are usually pretty accurate when it comes to fuel pressure. Let's put pressure here. We've got rail pressure, we got set point. Set point is the expected value, what it should be. And rail is actual. We got fuel low pressure, but I'm not sure how accurate that is, but let's take a look anyway. Press OK. And we've got a static rail pressure of 63, which is even lower than the fuel low pressure. I wonder if that actually moves, because it's staying too still for me. That sometimes they have substituted values when there isn't actually a low pressure fuel sensor. So let's take a look at compare that to the rail pressure. It took a little while. It's showing 2900. That's higher than what I remember, but it's doing it. It took a little while to get there, but it is doing it. But now it's tapering off a little. You see that? It's tapering me off big time. Now I can feel the misfires. My check engine light is blinking, and I'm gonna turn it off, and it drops right down to 91 with the fuel low pressure rock solid at 84. I kind of wish I'm almost positive that this is a substituted value. Kind of wish that they would have had an actual sensor. That way we could see if it is back feeding into the low pressure side, it is going too high or something like that. That would have been awesome. But the fact that it is running extremely rich, it smells like fuel right now, that makes me think that we have a stuck open injector or something like that. If you want to see what a known good looks like, go take a look at the video that I did on this already. I'll show a screenshot on your view. You'll be able to refer back to that one. You'll be able to see the good values after the repairs and whatnot. In that video, I compared to the other bank and all that. I'm not going to do that right now. I don't want to keep it running too much. So yeah, I think we have a stuck open injector. It makes sense, but what I can't explain is why is it running extremely rich on both banks. It might be a strategy just to keep it running, but I can't explain it. If it was a stuck open injector, I would expect it to be very rich on just the side where it's misfiring or stuck open, wherever the injector is stuck open. So maybe there's an X pipe or an H pipe in the resonator somewhere. Who knows? It wouldn't surprise me. But as far as I can tell, externally, I can't tell really. But or there's an overfueling strategy just to keep this thing running, to compensate for the lack of actual pressure. Anyway, I think the most efficient way to go about this without going too crazy, because in the last video we swapped the high pressure pumps just to make sure, be 100% that there's nothing else going on. But I think in this case, since it's so rich and there's dead misses, I'm not so sure if I should take that approach or if I should just take off all the spark plugs, put bore scopes in there, and make sure there's no leaking injectors. Taking off the spark plugs is super easy. The only thing is that if you look at the other video that I made, the one where I got my ass kicked by a MISFIRE, I'll put that up there 2 years ago. It was on a 2015 640i. It's a GDI. This is a GDI as well. Once I take off those spark plugs, you don't want to reuse them. Refer to the video if you're wondering why. So we have spark plugs ready. We actually have those in stock. We're gonna remove the spark plugs, the coils and the spark plugs. Not sure if you guys can see this clearly, but I already cleared some of the way, and stick the test long in there, that bore scope, and see if we find any leaking injectors. Since there was 1, 3, and 4 misfiring, it's going to be impossible to say which one. So I decided let's just do the whole bank and see what we find. So stick around to clarify. If there was one leaking injector, it would affect the whole bank, because the whole bank is losing fuel pressure that is supposed to be there in the high pressure system. So it doesn't take much. I mean, just you crack open a line just a hair and fuel pressure will drop. So we've got our bore scope in here already. Number 3 was wet, so I went for that one first. So that's where I'm at, and I'm already looking at the valves. If you look down at the piston, it is completely wet there. You see that puddle? Hope you guys can see this. Hopefully our cylinder isn't washed. It doesn't look like it suffered any real scoring. But let's look at the valves. We've got chunks of carbon that have been cleaned off because of the fuel. Chunks of carbon are exiting these pistons. Look at that injector is already wet up there too, and it's clean as well. It's supposed to be pitch black because this is a GDI engine, and it's not. You can see chunks of carbon have already been removed from the piston. I'm sorry, from the valves. And yeah, our cap may have suffered as well, so that's something we're gonna have to present to the customer as well. And yeah, thank goodness for a bore scope, right? Check that out. Nothing but fuel. So, injector it is. And those of you who are wondering, yes, these are fitting into these BMW spark plug holes. They are the smallest spark plugs that I have found so far, and the bore scope gets it done. So Teslong TD500 for the win. The other ones, I would expect them to be dry because all the spark plugs are dry, but I'm going to check them anyway. Number 3 is full of fuel. That is why our whole bank is losing pressure and causing misfire across the whole bank. Our catalytic converter may have suffered. We're going to present that to the customer. Oddly enough, when I was removing this spark plug, there was a noise being made. I don't know what that was. It was kind of weird. But it's the only one that made the noise, and it's the one that was leaking fuel in there. So kind of weird, but something to note. What are the chances, right? You would think that it would be the high pressure pump, right? Because one went and maybe the other has gone too, but no, not in this case. It's the injector stuck open. We will present the customer with the option of doing all of the injectors while we're in there, because quite frankly, they're all going through the same amount of work. So I'm not suspecting fuel contamination either. These things are notorious for doing these things. Also, since there was a fuel going into the cylinder, obviously the cylinder, that fuel makes it past the rings, so we're going to have to do an oil change as well. I smelled this. The first thing I did was smell this, because a lot of times the high pressure fuel pumps leak into the combustion chamber, or into the crankcase, I'm sorry, and it ends up smelling like fuel. But I don't smell too much fuel. Honestly, I can't perceive it, but I'm not going to take any chances. If you have fuel entering the crankcase, whether by the fuel pump itself leaking into the crankcase or by an injector stuck open and going through the piston rings, and you do not do an oil change, you risk washing out the main bearings and causing lower end issues on these things. Hopefully it's not already up to that point. We're going to obviously tell the customer this, that there may have been damage. That's the reality of the situation. And whenever you have any fuel going into the crankcase, you run the risk of washing those bearings just like you would cylinder walls, and then the lubrication gets not diluted but cut down by fuel, and you run the risk of lower end damage. And obviously, which I already mentioned, the possible cat damage that has already taken place. This also proves another thing, that this exhaust system, although there are two separate pipes, they meet up at the resonator, and I believe they have to be connected because both sides had fuel coming out of them, both exhausts. So there must be some kind of a connection, whether it's an X pipe or an H pipe, it doesn't matter. But just so that anybody's wondering, these things are connected some way, somehow. So I just thought I'd share that with you anyway. Let's see if we can get an approval. Knowing the customer, the fact that they've done work with us in the past, I'm pretty confident they will go ahead and go for the full fix. We cannot forget to code the new injector. They have different flow rates. You have to code the injector for a flow rate compensation before you start up the car. We're going to dry out that cylinder, do an oil change, all that good stuff, write it up, and await approval and see what they say. So we finally got the approval to do the one injector and the spark plugs that we had to remove, as stated earlier, and you can refer to the video that I mentioned earlier. Once you remove that spark plug, you open yourself up to getting misfires if you opt to reinstall it. So we are not going to reinstall the same spark plugs, and to help me out is going to be my brother. I was actually out of work for like 4 days, and my back got screwed up. It wasn't work related. I didn't screw it up at work, but I've had a back injury for 7 years now, unaddressed, and I think now is about time that I address it. So if anybody's wondering, yeah, this has been like a couple days already, like a week later since the last time we spoke. So my brother's gonna do the job. I'm not gonna film it. I'm moving on to diags only. I'm literally diags only at this point due to my back injury. I can't do certain things. I could lift this camera, but like the pain is already starting to set in. I can't lean forward. I'm very limited in the things that I can do. Thankfully, the shop is working around the injury, and I'm able to come back to work and do the light load stuff, the diag stuff, the things of that nature. So, anywho, we're gonna go ahead and install one new injector, code it, do the oil change off camera as well, and come back to you and show the confirmed fix. All right, so she is fixed. She is up and running, and in all its glory. That was one nice car. I'll tell you that much. I really like this car. They did a good job on it, and it's like a step lower from like a Rolls Royce.
Some people might be like, what are you talking about? But you look inside that thing, I think it's pretty nice, smooth ride. No more smoke, no more misfires.
Doesn't look so bad, but in person is actually a lot worse.
My brother got this one done for me. As I stated, had back injuries. Luckily enough, we have enough diags and programming so that I could focus on that instead of, doing things that I shouldn't be doing at this time. It's going to be like this for the next couple of days, at least for me. A couple of things to take away from this video is the symptoms could be exactly the same. Doesn't mean it's a comeback. Many shops shortchange themselves by calling something a comeback when it isn't. It's premature. They see a car come back for something with the same, even if it's the exact same symptoms. Well, this is a perfect example of it could be the exact same symptoms. Oh, we got more smoke. Oh man, a blown turbo on a Sprinter. Anyway, we could have the exact same symptoms on the exact same vehicle, and it is not a comeback. Document everything. You could show before and after. And in the other video, the good thing about documenting this whole thing through YouTube is that we could just refer back to a video and say, hey, listen, if it was on bank such and such, and this time it's on the opposite bank, and documentation is key. The other takeaway would be do not call something a comeback prematurely. Not only is that inaccurate, a lot of shops, a lot of service writers will take it upon themselves to call it a comeback in front of the customer, and that really is inaccurate. It's you haven't assessed the damages, like the vehicle, and it doesn't make you look good by calling it a comeback. Sure, it might earn you some point. Oh yeah, we'll get it fixed no matter what. The truth is, you have to assess the vehicle before you decide whether it's going to be something that the shop is going to end up paying for, or if it's going to be something that the customer is going to be ending up paying for it. So, like in this case, we didn't call it a comeback. Vehicle came in, same exact symptoms. Customer was great customer. Turns out it was a completely different thing. Last time it was a high pressure fuel pump. This time it's a stuck open injector, which, by the way, I got over here. And it will be a nice demonstration to show the customer, if they have any doubts whatsoever, whether that injector was stuck open. Check that out. Oh yeah, love that right there. Don't call it a comeback prematurely. Even if it has the same symptoms, don't call it a comeback, because, especially to the customer, because you're shortchanging yourself. And don't treat it as a comeback from the get-go. It's just the wrong mindset. You're going to go in there like with all this doubt, like, oh, what did I miss? What did I do wrong? Treat it as a new diag, and you'll be better off that way. Another takeaway is, well, maybe diag and programming is something that you should have more in your shop in case somebody does get injured, and to the point where they can't do certain things. Like me, I can't lean forward too well and start doing this kind of work for a couple of days, and at least we have something to fall back on. My suggestion would be is if at all possible, get as much diag and programming stuff you can through the door. There's a lot of shops, obviously it depends on what you're working on and your location, but European vehicles tend to have a lot of programming, a lot of diag, a lot of electrical stuff. Most of the time you're just finding the swimming pool. But try to get some of that stuff into your shop. If you're not into diag yet, get into it. Work on more Euros. You have better approvals. You have a wider variety of the kind of work that you bring in. Is not just nuts and bolts. And that's what this channel is really about. It's more for the diag stuff than it is the nuts and bolts. Thank you all for taking the time to watch. Appreciate each and every single one of you. Hit like if you haven't already. If you think I've earned your subscription, consider subscribing. Don't worry, my back will be fine. Soon enough, I will be going to the doctor and getting it all checked out. Hopefully, make a full recovery. That's all I got for you today. Thanks again, and until next time.